Welcome to today's deep dive. If you are listening to this right now, you are likely a dedicated learner.
Yeah, future board-certified behavior analyst.
Exactly. And you are probably currently staring down the barrel of the BCBA 6th edition certification exam.
Which is, well, it's a lot. We know you were putting in the hours.
Right, whether you're listening on your commute or, at the gym, we want to help you maximize that study time.
Definitely.
So to do that, we have an incredibly focused stack of source material on the table today.
We are looking at the official BCBA 6th edition test content outline.
Plus several comprehensive study guides.
Yeah, and some detailed ethical case scenarios. But most importantly, actual mock exam questions, specifically targeting Domain A.
Because our mission for this deep dive is to zero in entirely on Domain A, specifically Task A, Point 4.
Right. And for anyone tracking the numbers on their exam breakdown, Domain A makes up 5% of your total test.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but out of the 175 scored questions,
That translates to roughly 8 questions specifically dedicated to the philosophical underpinnings of the science.
and 8 questions can easily be the difference between passing and failing.
Absolutely. Task of Point 4 asks you to cleanly distinguish among 4 distinct but deeply interconnected concepts.
Concepts that frequently trip up even the most prepared students.
I mean, I know they tripped me up when I first started doing the mocks. We are talking about behaviorism.
The experimental analysis of behavior, which you will see as EAB,
Applied behavior analysis, or ABA.
and professional practice guided by the science of behavior analysis.
Nailing these conceptual foundations isn't just about getting those 8 questions right.
No, not at all. These concepts form the lens through which you must view literally every other scenario on the test.
So true.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start at the very top of the conceptual hierarchy.
The overarching umbrella under which everything else sits.
Exactly. Behaviorism. According to the study guide details, behaviorism is defined as the conceptual analysis of behavior.
Meaning it deals purely with the theoretical and conceptual issues.
Right. It is not about the hands-on clinical work. It is essentially the philosophy of behavior.
The philosophy.
Yeah, it's the theoretical foundation that assumes behavior is lawful, that it is determined by environmental variables, and that we can study it objectively.
It is the absolute bedrock. Think about why this matters for your exam and really for your future career.
Why does it matter?
Because behaviorism is the underlying philosophy that gives us permission to do all the research and clinical work that follows.
That makes sense.
Without this philosophical assumption, without agreeing that behavior is a natural phenomenon subject to natural laws, the rest of our science simply doesn't exist.
If we didn't have behaviorism, we would be stuck attributing human actions to unobservable internal mental states.
Exactly. We'd be saying things like, he's acting out because he has an angry soul.
Which is something we can neither measure nor change.
Right. And the study guides make a very specific distinction here that I think we really need to highlight for the listener.
Oh, about Watson and Skinner.
Yes. They point out the difference between Watson's early methodological behaviorism,
Which argued we should only look at publicly observable behaviors.
right, versus B.F. Skinner's radical behaviorism, which includes private events.
But honestly, for someone just trying to study for the exam, why does Skinner's inclusion of private events actually matter? I mean, it sounds like an obscure historical footnote.
It sounds like it, yeah. But it's actually a clinician's superpower. Think about it.
Okay.
Skinner's radical behaviorism insists that all behavior, including private events like thinking and feeling, are physical events that can be analyzed in terms of their relationship to the environment.
So if thinking and feeling are just behaviors...
That they are subject to the exact same natural laws as a rat pressing a lever.
that means you, the future BCBA, aren't powerless when a client has internal struggles.
Exactly. You can actually intervene by adjusting the external environment.
But for the sake of the exam hierarchy, whenever you see a question asking about the theoretical, philosophical, or conceptual assumptions of why we do what we do,
You are squarely in the realm of behaviorism.
it is the philosophy that says, yes, we can study this scientifically.
Period.
So if we have a philosophy that says we can study something scientifically, we can't just sit around in armchairs talking about it.
No, we have to actually go test those philosophical assumptions.
And where does that take us?
That takes us into the laboratory.
Right. The second tier of our hierarchy, the experimental analysis of behavior.
Or EAB.
Looking at the details from the sources, EAB involves highly controlled laboratory settings with both human and non-human subjects.
This is where the actual testing of the behaviorist philosophy takes place.
But I know a lot of listeners get bogged down by the jargon here. The texts mention researchers using single-case experimental design arrangements to isolate variables.
Let's make sure we ground that for the listener before we move on. What's fascinating here is that EAB is strictly about looking at the fundamental principles of behavior.
Without any distraction.
Exactly. A single-case experimental design just means we aren't looking at the average behavior of 100 different people.
We're taking one subject. Maybe a pigeon, maybe a rat, maybe a human.
And studying their specific behavior intensely over time, changing one variable to see exactly what happens.
They are in highly controlled environments, like studying a pigeon pecking a key on a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement.
Right.
And for those listening who might be a few chapters behind, a variable ratio schedule is basically the slot machine effect.
Yeah, reinforcement is delivered after an unpredictable number of responses.
Precisely. Or it could be a human subject pressing a button in a soundproof room for a monetary reward.
The key takeaway for the exam is that EAB is not about solving a specific person's specific problem.
It's about discovering the basic laws of operant and respondent conditioning.
I have one of the mock exam questions right in front of me, and honestly, the distractors the test writers use are incredibly sneaky.
Oh, let's hear it.
This is question 127 from the Preguntas Wizard source.
Okay.
It asks you to identify the domain focused purely on researching basic principles of behavior.
Well, the correct answer is EAB.
Right. But the distractors try to trick you into picking ABA or practice.
They want to see if you will fall for the trap of thinking all behavior analysis is about treating clients.
Which raises an important question for you, the test taker. When you read a scenario on the actual exam, you have to ask yourself,
what is the primary goal of the person in this scenario?
Yes. If the goal is simply to discover a basic principle, like exactly how long a pause follows a reinforcement delivery on a fixed interval schedule, you are looking at EAB.
Even if the subjects are humans?
Yes. Subjects could be animals or humans, but the setting is tightly controlled, and the goal is pure scientific discovery.
But let's be real. Most of the people listening right now aren't planning to spend their careers running single-case design experiments on pigeons in soundproof rooms.
No, definitely not. They want to know how this helps them pass the exam and help their clients.
So how does it?
The results of EAB give us the raw materials. You cannot build a stable bridge without understanding the fundamental laws of physics.
That's a great analogy.
Similarly, you cannot change complex human behavior without understanding the basic laws of reinforcement, punishment, extinction, and stimulus control that were discovered in the EAB lab.
EAB gives us the tools.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because taking those pristine, controlled discoveries and dropping them into a chaotic third-grade classroom or a busy group home
Is where the real challenge lies.
That brings us to the third tier, Applied Behavior Analysis, or ABA.
This is the area where most listeners are accumulating their fieldwork hours.
We need to clearly distinguish ABA from EAB, and the study guide gives us a precise definition.
ABA aims to discover the functional relations between socially significant behavior and the controlling variables.
If you are scribbling notes right now, underline, highlight, and circle the phrase socially significant.
That phrase is your safety net for the exam.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, ABA takes those fundamental principles discovered in the EAB lab and actively attempts to influence those variables for the betterment of the individual and society.
We aren't just studying a lever press to see what happens anymore.
Whoa, we are studying a child's communication skills.
Or an adult's independent living skills.
Or a student's reading fluency.
Let me bring up another scenario from the sources to untangle this.
Go for it.
Mock exam question 143 asks for the rationale for why a target skill should be trained.
Okay.
One of the distractor options basically says because it's mentioned in a famous textbook.
And another implies you do it because a popular seminar teaches it.
It's a complete trap.
A very common trap.
The correct answer, derived directly from the definition of ABA, is that we use research-based methods to effect socially valid behavior change.
That socially valid element defines the entire domain.
In ABA, researchers and clinicians are still conducting experiments. They are still using single-case designs, just like in EAB.
But the environment is the natural setting.
A classroom, a home, a clinic.
And the dependent variable, the behavior being measured, must be something that fundamentally improves the quality of life for the learner.
So if a researcher publishes a study in a journal demonstrating a new way to use differential reinforcement to decrease severe self-injury in a community job site
They are operating within the realm of applied behavior analysis.
because they have discovered a functional relation that has profound social significance.
Exactly. They use the scientific method to solve a human problem.
Okay, but I want to push back on this a little bit on behalf of the listener.
Push away.
We just established that ABA involves discovering functional relations and conducting applied research.
Right.
But a massive percentage of BCBAs out there are not conducting formal research.
True.
They aren't trying to publish in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis.
No, they are looking at a client's behavior plan and implementing interventions that have already been proven to work.
So where do they fit into this hierarchy?
That brings us perfectly to our fourth and final domain, professional practice guided by the science of behavior analysis.
In some of the texts in our stack, you'll also see this referred to as behavioral service delivery.
This is when behavior analysts actually design, implement, and evaluate behavior tactics that come from the fundamental principles of behavior.
You are taking what the science has already proven and delivering it to a client who needs it.
To bring this to life, we absolutely have to talk about mock exam question 32.
Oh, the story is Seaman.
Yes. According to the prompt, Seaman is a former behavior technician who is now an elementary school teacher.
And as a teacher, Seaman incorporates behavior analytic strategies in his classroom to help his students behave more successfully.
The question asks what domain Seaman is working in.
And the answer is practice guided by behavior analysis.
Let's break down the distractors and why they are wrong.
Sure, Seaman is definitely not in the first tier, behaviorism.
Because he isn't just philosophizing about the nature of human learning, he is actively intervening.
And he isn't in the second tier, EAB.
Because he isn't in a lab running tightly controlled experiments on basic principles with no regard for social significance.
Right. And the trickiest distractor, he also isn't technically doing ABA, at least not in the strict scientific sense of the third tier.
Why? Because he's using behavior analytic strategies, right?
He is using the strategies, yes, but you have to look at his primary goal.
His primary goal isn't to discover new functional relations, run a formal single case design, or publish research.
His primary goal is to teach his third graders.
Seaman is working on the front lines. He is using established principles.
Maybe setting up a token economy.
Or using a high-probability request sequence where he asks a student to do 3 easy tasks before giving them a hard one.
He is delivering a service. This is professional practice.
The vast majority of BCBAs spend the vast majority of their time in this fourth tier.
You assess a client, you look at the established ABA literature, you design an intervention based on that science, and you implement it to improve their life.
But what if Seaman accidentally discovers a new functional relation while he's teaching?
That's a great question.
Let's say he tries a completely novel way of delivering tokens and realizes it works better than anything in the literature. Does his domain suddenly change?
That's a great edge case. The short answer for the exam is no, not immediately.
Clinical practice often leads to clinical discoveries.
But to move from professional practice back into the domain of ABA, Seaman would need to systematically set up an experiment,
Isolate the variables.
control for confounding factors, and formally demonstrate that functional relation.
Intent and systematic methodology separate the two domains.
There is another crucial layer to this professional practice domain that ties directly into the BACB ethics code.
Specifically, Code 1.01, which is heavily featured in our source stack.
As ethical practitioners, professionals must rely on scientifically derived knowledge.
Professional practice is a distinct category on the exam, but it must be directly informed by the science of behavior analysis.
Our sources highlight several ethical dilemmas where practitioners are tempted by interventions that are not based on the science.
If you are operating in the domain of professional practice, you cannot just do whatever feels right.
Or whatever the newest internet trend dictates.
Your practice must be tethered to the empirical evidence generated by EAB and ABA.
If it isn't, you're no longer practicing professional practice guided by the science of behavior analysis.
You are practicing pseudoscience.
They see this all the time in the mock scenarios.
For example, a BCBA has a client whose parents desperately want to introduce a non-behavioral therapy,
Like milieu therapy,
or maybe facilitated communication.
or even Reiki to reduce challenging behavior.
As a practitioner in that fourth tier, your job isn't to run an experiment to see if Reiki works.
Your job is to politely but firmly explain the lack of scientific validation and guide that family back to evidence-based practices.
You rely on the science.
It's not just about what you do in professional practice. It's heavily about what you refuse to do.
This interconnectedness is really beautiful when you step back and look at it.
The philosophy of behaviorism gives us the permission to study behavior scientifically.
EAB gives us the controlled laboratory to discover the basic laws of how behavior works.
ABA takes those laws and figures out how to apply them to complex, real-world, socially significant problems.
And professional practice takes those proven ABA interventions and delivers them directly to the people who need them the most.
So what does this all mean for your exam preparation?
How do you synthesize all this so you don't get trapped by tricky wording on test day?
To keep this straight, I like to visualize how these flow into one another. Think of it as a cascade.
Philosophy dictates the lab work.
The lab work creates the applied science.
And the applied science gives us the tools for everyday practice.
Behaviorism, EAB, ABA, professional practice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to the multiple choice exam you are preparing to take, we have to talk about the common traps.
The most frequent misconception is blurring the lines between ABA and EAB.
Or blurring the lines between ABA and professional practice.
The exam writers know exactly where students get confused, and they will exploit it.
They absolutely will. So let's establish some absolute rules for test day.
For the listener, if a test question mentions non-human subjects, rats, pigeons, dogs,
Or if it strictly talks about discovering basic principles without any mention of helping a specific population, what is it?
it is EAB. Do not pick ABA.
Conversely, if the question mentions conducting an experiment, collecting baseline and intervention data,
And discovering a functional relation that improves a socially significant behavior like teaching a child to communicate or reducing severe aggression.
that is ABA.
The key is the systematic experimental manipulation aimed at a socially significant problem.
And finally, if the question describes a BCBA consulting with a family,
Or an RBT running a session.
a teacher like Seaman applying a classroom management strategy.
Or an organizational behavior manager setting up a performance matrix for employees.
That is professional practice guided by the science of behavior analysis.
They are applying the science, yes, but their primary function in that moment is service delivery, not formal scientific discovery.
Look for the ultimate goal of the person in the prompt.
Is their goal to publish a study demonstrating a new functional relation?
Or is their goal to fulfill a contract to provide behavioral services to a school district?
The action might look identical on the surface. They both involve taking data and implementing interventions.
But the domain is defined by the overarching purpose.
Exactly. A researcher might implement a token economy to prove a hypothesis about conditioned reinforcement in an applied setting.
That's ABA.
A BCBA might implement that exact same token economy because they know it will help their client complete their homework and reduce family stress.
That's professional practice. Same intervention, entirely different domain.
It requires a sharp eye. But once you understand these core differences, those 8 questions on Domain A of the exam become absolute freebies.
You will read the prompt, identify the goal, and immediately know which of the 4 domains applies.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of conceptual ground today.
Let's do a rapid-fire 3-sentence review to completely cement your understanding before we wrap up.
First, behaviorism is the guiding philosophy, while EAB is the controlled laboratory research discovering basic principles.
Second, ABA takes those principles to conduct applied research on socially significant behaviors.
Third, professional practice uses the evidence generated by ABA to deliver actual clinical and educational services to clients in the real world.
That is Domain A, Task A, Point 4.
You have the hierarchy, you have the definitions, and you have the exam traps to watch out for.
We strongly encourage you to keep pushing forward to the next concept in Domain A of your 6th edition outline.
These foundational concepts might seem abstract right now, but they truly do dictate how you will answer questions on assessment, intervention, and ethics later in the exam.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final thought drawn from the source materials discussion on the philosophical assumptions of science.
We briefly touched on things like empiricism and determinism, but there is another assumption called philosophic doubt.
This is the idea that scientists must continuously question truths as new information becomes available in the literature.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Think about the cascade we just built. If behaviorism is our guiding philosophy, and EAB is our highly controlled lab work where we discover absolute truths about behavior,
What happens when those two collide?
how might future unprecedented discoveries in the EAB lab force us to apply philosophic doubt and completely rewrite the fundamental philosophy of behaviorism itself?
Science is never truly settled. It is always evolving.
So as you go out and practice, remember that the philosophy informs the lab, but the lab can also completely upend the philosophy.
Something for you to ponder as you hit the books for your exam.
Keep questioning, keep studying, and keep relying on the science. You've got this exam. We will catch you on the next deep dive.